All right, hello and welcome to Teaching Python. This is episode 112, and today it's all about Dash and Plotly. We're joined today with a community manager from Plotly. Adam Schroeder is joining us. But before we introduce him, my name's Sean Tiber. I'm a coder who teaches.
And my name's Kelly Schuster Paredes, and I'm a teacher who codes.
So welcome, Adam, to the show. We're happy to have you. We're excited to talk about Dash and how teachers can use it in the classroom. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for inviting me, Kelly. I'm honored to be here.
Well, we're excited about this. It's, data is everywhere, and being able to visualize it and understand it is, a critical skill for learners to take on and be prepared for jobs of the future. So we're excited to jump into the topic and figure out how Dash can help with that.
Cool. Let's do it.
All right. Before we get into the main topic, Kelly, why don't we start with the wins of the week?
Sounds good. I actually have one this time.
Go for it. It's all you.
No, we're gonna make Adam go first. You forgot.
All right, we'll make Adam go first. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, wins of the week. I would say, one win this week was that I was able to meet, because I'm the community manager at Plotly, and I was able to meet this week with two community managers from other open source libraries and companies, and I found that meeting very enriching, because given that they have the same role that I have, we were able to share ideas, give feedback to each other about different initiatives that we were thinking about. For example, one of the community managers, she was asking us with her startup, where she works, probably about 50 employees, they're thinking about creating starting a discourse forum for people to talk. And she was asking us, like, what do we think? Should we do it? Should we not do it? And the tips we gave her were very helpful. She told us. And then I asked about an initiative that I'm thinking about for Plotly. And so it was a very rich conversation, and connecting with others that are in the same mindset as you are is always a win for me.
Yeah, isn't that great when you have a good conversation with people who are trying to figure out the same sorts of problems that you're trying to solve as well? And, we're surrounded by all these people that, in our normal day-to-day life that have no idea the kind of work that we're doing. So to connect with someone who really gets it and understands it is a pretty special moment to have.
Yeah, definitely. And that they can share feedback about things that you've tried, right? You've tried in the past, like, or that that you're going to try, and they can tell you, well, we've tried that. Don't do that. Look out for this mistakes. And it really makes the learning journey a lot faster.
Absolutely. I love sharing and talking to people, and it just like gets my mind and my creative side going. And that's why we do this podcast too, so we can do that. So that's cool. That's a huge win.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly, I'll pass it to you next.
I kind of have two. So one, I checked off a huge summer project for school done today. We got the Class VR headsets from Robolab. I forget Robolab. Trying to remember where they come from, but I should know this by heart. But we got them. I got them up. I got them all enrolled. I got them all named. They're asset tags, and anyone who's listening who's a teacher knows that when you're working with ed tech, doing asset tags is a huge project. 5 hours of that. But that wasn't a huge win. I do want to harp on a really good win I had, and you'll laugh. I finally learned how to play Minecraft.
Yay!
I did a workshop like a couple weeks ago, or not even last week or something, and it was all about cybersecurity. And I will share that information later on at the end of the show about the worlds that's going to be available. So much fun. Did Caesar ciphers in Minecraft. I actually built a house in Minecraft, which was funny. And my kids were laughing at me because I've had it in the classroom so long, and I've let kids use it as a lesson. I've always done, empathy or other worlds in the class, but I've never actually played it. And it's addicting. It's so stupidly addicting.
There's something to that whole Minecraft thing, right?
Yeah. I did realize, it is called Minecraft for a reason, because the default is mining, which now makes sense, not building.
I never knew that. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't either. Yeah, see, you learn things every day. And that's why when you have to, was it right click to build or throw a block or whatever? Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I got to learn a lot of terminology about maps and versus worlds and all kinds of stuff. So huge win on
That's
my
awesome.
part. I know. I thought
That's
you would be
awesome.
happy about that.
In my day job, I'm surrounded by a lot of cybersecurity people, and we all have a lot of like one foot in platform engineering, the other foot in cybersecurity, and making sure that we're building it safely. And so I mentioned to them that you were taking that class. I was like, "How cool is this? My friend is taking cybersecurity, but in Minecraft," and they're all like, "Did that dog head tilt thing?" Like, wait, what? You can do that? Like and then I explained it to them, and I was like, "No, this is legitimately amazing that you can teach it in this world." And a lot of them were like, "Okay, so where do I go download that? How do I start working with
Okay, well,
it?"
I have to share it then, obviously,
Yeah.
right now.
Yep.
So there's actually two worlds that are published right now. They're Cyber Safe, which home sweet because all the NPCs go which is why they named it, and that's for the younger kids, like your K5s. And then you have Privacy Prodigy, which is your 6 to 8, and that one's about cyber safety skills, little ones like that. You have Cloudcraft, which isn't out yet, which is exploring data centers. That comes out in August. And you have, what's the other one? I think Cloudcraft. Yeah, Cloudcraft comes out in August. Data centers, cybersecurity, cyber fundamentals, and cyber expert, which is for your 912s. That comes out in August. And then they have actually an 8+. So all your little interns and stuff that want to play Minecraft, there's going to be a lot of deep cybersecurity lessons going in there, and it's incredible. I mean, I tell you what, the Caesar cipher was getting me. Let me just say.
All right.
So
I'll
it's all
come back
there.
to you for recommendations on which age level is appropriate for senior business leaders to take.
Sounds good. Sorry, that was a long win, but that was a huge one. So
Nice.
Sean,
Well,
Kelly, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you, Sean. In case my internet gets disconnected, is there a good phone number I can call in, or anything I could do, or it's really just?
It's pretty much just internet, so we'll
Okay.
just roll
So
with it.
I'll activate the hotspot.
Yep. If your internet goes down, I'll try to imitate your voice and anticipate your answers.
Good.
All right. So my win this week is completely outside of my job and teaching and all of those things. Although there's been some really good progress with the summer interns. For me, it was actually just a bit of fun. My lease is up on my car, and my wife has started a new job as of this week that involves a lot more commuting than usual. So we're looking into electric vehicles and trying to find something that will be more efficient for her to get to and from work. So we've been test driving a lot of EV cars, and it's a lot of fun to see what's out there and what's new. And I wouldn't say any of them are really in the super affordable segment yet. They're cars are just expensive now in general. Rivian's cool, a little outside of my budget range. But I did test drive the Cadillac Lyric, which was pretty neat. American made car. They have built-in seat massagers in the back, so I felt very fancy driving that around. It was pretty fun. The nerd in me is loving all of the technology and the integrations and the way that really cars are becoming more about the software that powers them in a way that has never been done before. So it really just reinforces this whole idea of that almost anything we build is going to require, some sort of thoughtful approach to designing software and experiences for the users. And so it was just kind of cool to see the variety of different things that are out there. So far, I think Tesla is still probably the most connected, most polished software experience, but there's a lot of vehicles that are catching up really, really fast.
I feel like you have to wait a little bit to wait to those LLM, the large language models get built in, and then you can just talk to your car and chat GPT with it.
Right.
Well, a lot of that is actually happening through all the speech to text and the voice assistants. So the Cadillac that we drove had Google Assistant built into it.
Wow.
Not too happy with Bard, so.
Well, we'll get there.
Sorry, we digress. That's too long. We spent
Yeah.
too long on that.
Yeah. Why don't
Let's get into the
we
fun.
yeah, let's get into the main topic. Thanks for everyone being patient with us on the wins of the week. It's been a while since we've gotten to share, so it's a lot of fun to talk through it. Let's talk about Dash and Plotly, and let's start, I guess, by just kind of explaining what they are and how they fit together. And because I know there's a really tight relationship there that has been very beneficial to the open source community and has worked as a pretty successful business model as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Um, so Plotly is the company. I am Plotly community manager for the open source, but Plotly is the company. Within Plotly, we have two open source products. Well, packages, right? That anybody around the world can use. Teachers, students, anybody. I worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City before Plotly, and I used Plotly when I worked for the mentoring organization because I wanted to show my department some graphs and data trends with Dash. So these two products are called Plotly, and the other product is Dash. Both are open source. Plotly is a graphing library in Python. Both of these are Python. So if a teacher wants to teach their student how to go beyond the theory of what a scatter plot is, what a bar chart is, what a pie chart is, and how it can help us people understand and dissect data, once they go past that theory and they want to show them how to build those kind of graphs, then they could use Plotly because it's a graphing library in Python. And all you need is your computer and a Python IDE, and you have it, right? You pip install Plotly, and there you go. Dash is a framework that allows you to build analytics web apps, right? In many cases, it incorporates Plotly graphs because the Plotly graphs is natively part of Dash. So you use Dash when you want to build more interactivity and showcase like a complete dashboard, right? Because so you can build with Dash, you can build the drop downs, the date pickers, the sliders, the radio buttons, and then you can connect them to graphs using Dash, right? You have this interactivity on your web page that you're able to achieve through Dash and using the Plotly graphs.
And this was huge. And I know Sean heard the whole story during my data science boot camp because, they make us go from the beginning teaching people who have never coded before, going through everything from JavaScript and HTML. And then they take you and then they go and show Flask, and you have to build your HTML index page, and you're going through the whole thing. And at the end, they're like, okay, you need to make this entire web thing, web visualization out of whatever topic you want. And you only have 10 minutes to produce it and 1 week to make it. And everyone trying to manipulate all this stuff. And I found Dash, and I was telling my team, I was like, oh my God, this is so easy. It's like one file, and everything written inside. And it's just phenomenal. And not many people have heard of it, and they don't even teach that yet at Georgia Tech. So shame on you, Georgia Tech. Put Dash in the curriculum, and it was just amazing. And it kind of takes away that. And some people will probably be upset with this, but it kind of takes away that need to have to build, your index.html page.
Exactly. It's so nice that you brought that up, Kelly, because especially like Flask, because Dash sits on top of Flask. Like Flask is under the hood, so nobody really knows they're using Flask unless they're aware of it and they see similar syntax. But it just sits on top of Flask, and now you don't have to define all these separate files and functions. It's just one app.py file. You declare what you want to see in your HTML on that file, and that's it. It's all there.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And when did Dash? What version are we on? And when did it start?
So, I should have given you a bit more history here or context. So, Plotly, as the company / Plotly graphing library, came out in about 2013. And we had, at first, it was just a graphing library. We had also Chart Studio, which allowed you to build everything on the browser. You would build your graphs. You would connect to each other by less programming, more like, give me this drop down, let me drag this. And then at a certain point, we said, okay, that's not enough. We want something more powerful. And in 2017, we came up with Dash, right? Which is for those who are maybe listening to us and have a little bit more knowledge into Python or programming. What really Dash is just a Python wrapper of React. You can do a drop down with a checkbox, a checkbox with React and stuff, a dead picker with React. But React is complicated. I don't know React, JavaScript, React. These are really complicated tools, and you have to define HTML. You have to connect them. So we just wrap them in Python, Dash, and now if you want to declare a button, you just say, HTML button. You want to declare a dropdown, a dash core component dot dropdown, dash core component dot checkbox. So it just using Python, as you probably know, it just makes things a lot easier because if you know English, you know Python.
Absolutely, and I loved the tutorial, the 20 Dash in 20 minutes. Literally, that's what I used. And when I was telling everybody, I'm like, oh, it's done. What do we need? We need a header. We can put in the bootstrap in there. It just copy that right in. I was like, what do you want? I got it.
Yeah, everything is in there. And continuing the line scaling of like the history. So 2017. We developed Dash, and now you can create like interactive dashboards or real Python web apps with adding Python Plotly graphs in it. These are all open source and will forever be open source. But in 2019, a few years ago, we developed Dash Enterprise, right? And Dash Enterprise are more used by companies and maybe universities because then that's like our product that we sell, where people can really take their apps to the next level. Right? Maybe they want multiple users and multiple usernames and passwords and authentication, and you want thousands of people externally visiting your web app. You can't, you need some more power to it. So that's what you do with Dash Enterprise. But plenty teachers reach out to me on a regular basis saying, Adam, I saw like Dash open source. How can I share this with my students? Like, how can I use this? And so that's, really happy we have that.
Nice. And then you personally, when did you start working with Dash? Was it around that time, that 2017 to 2019 timeframe, or a little bit later, or?
Sean, are you asking me when I started working with the package Dash or with the company formally as an employee?
When you started working with the package Dash, because from your bio, I see that there's some pretty interesting stuff that you've done as part of the community before becoming the community manager.
Yeah, good point. I was working at Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City as the VP of Family and Volunteer Intake and Onboarding, and up until the end of 2021. But I started working with, and this is my experience is often the experience of most community members and Dash users out there. I started with Plotly Graphing Library because I had Excel, right? But and I had some graphs that I could build with Excel. But for me, it seemed a bit too complicated, limited. You can't create any type of graph you want, and you can't customize the graph in any way you want in like multiple ways. And so I said, you know what, maybe I'll learn Python because it seems like a very relatively easy language, because that's not what I studied. I studied master's in conflict resolution and diplomacy, and that's not like, okay, let me just learn Python. And once I learned Python, I started with Seaborn graphing library, and then I was like, that's kind of cool. But I found Plotly because I could it seemed easier to me than Seaborn, and because it allowed at the time for more customization than Seaborn. So then I started building graphs in Plotly, and I used it at my department to like show my staff members different data trends, what's happening, how many volunteers, why are we getting? I mean, we had some information in Excel, but it's a lot easier when you see it on a graph, like long-term trends. You can look at row by row and see what's happening with a certain volunteer or a certain family member. But if you want to see the overall picture, it's a lot easier with graphs and a dashboard. Yeah. So that's really when I started getting into Plotly and Dash.
And you can't do like the hovers with all that information, right?
Right. Exactly.
and the drop down and changing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So beautiful. I actually love Plotly too. So, but we're sorry.
Well, and I think this is kind of what leads into the kind of the meat of things now, which is like, so how do we use this in education, right? As I think your story about not being a data scientist or a computer science programmer, you're just someone who wanted to visualize some data, right? To be able to understand it better and use these trends and then share that with others is, I think, a fairly common story that a lot of teachers have as well, which is, I have a lot of data, right? Or I have access to some data, and I want to be able to visualize and share that with other people so we can talk about it, or we can make decisions from it or learn from it. So when it comes to using Dash in this context, like what are the sorts of things that you're seeing in the community around education and how teachers, administrators, faculty are using Dash as part of either teaching or understanding their students better?
They didn't really go into a lot of detail on how they use it within the classroom. I had a couple of university professors that use it, but that's part of like, data science 101 and teaching them a little bit about visualization. And the others who did share a little bit from high school told me that they were using Dash to kind of supplement their subject matter, right? So whether they were teaching, I actually can't remember what they were teaching. I can't remember what subject matter they were teaching, but they said that they use Plotly and the graphing library as well as Dash for the dashboard to show the students, look, this is what, on the grand scale of things, this is the data that we're looking at, right? And maybe you want to go into like the specifics of the data instead of using, they often use Excel. Let's say, why don't you just use the drop down here or use this radio button to filter the data and spit out or plot the data on a graph according to the data that you want to see. So it seemed like from what they told me, it seemed like it just made the learning experience a lot faster for whatever they were teaching because it just had more powerful tools in their hands.
Yeah, and I'm thinking as you were talking, this is what I love about our show. I can imagine, an econ class or an AP econ class or someone in the high school. I mean, we could do it in the middle school, but not always. There's not a lot of computer science teachers in the middle school. But I'm thinking in the high school with science, all they have to do is give them a template, even if the teacher's doing it. Give them the template of the code and change out the data just to get a basic graph on site. So looking at the trends of what's going on with a certain thing in economics or looking at a trends of whatever they've collected. I know Sean first introduced me to the whole graphing thing when we first started teaching together with the what are they called? The race cars.
Oh, the
It's been so long.
I forget what they were called, but they're basically like they're little carved wooden roadster racers with a CO2 bottle in the back, and you puncture the CO2 bottle and they go shooting down the track. And
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You tell the story better.
I was gonna say, so what we did was we basically just did some Google Sheets work with them, right? So we had like a Google form, and we had the students entering the data from their races. How much does your car weigh? And how fast did it go? Like, what was its time at the end? And then what was pretty amazing with it was that we could project that on a screen. So as the responses were coming in, it was updating like a top 10 list, and it was doing like a graph and a scatter plot. And then one of the things we did afterwards was we went through and built a scatter plot of the mass of their car versus their time. And you can see that really clear correlation that the faster cars were the lightest cars, right?
Imagine like you can do with the Dash and Plotly, and then you actually have a live, you could put, a website, host it maybe if you wanted to, but you don't have to host it. And then you can actually hover on it and you can see that's Bob's car and, and they had this wheel axle. And so those thoughts like that, pretty cool.
Yeah. And you could do it live. Like if you're connected to a database, we have a thing called Dash cortical interval, where every second you can decide how often. You can say every second I want this to listen to a certain event or to listen to something that's happening, and then it will renew the data or pull more data from the database. So once a second or once every minute or once a day, whatever you want, you can pull data and see your dashboard update live, which is great for, I think you mentioned this, Sean, with your race car. Seems like it's great for like experimentation.
Right. And I think there were a couple things that worked really well with this because, and they're principles that I think Alberto Cairo, who's a professor at University of Miami in visualizations, talks about a lot, which is when you're doing like infographics and like informational visualizations in journalism, one of the things that helps engage people is when they can see themselves in the data, right? So if it's just a data set talking about other people, it's not as interesting as if it's a data set that includes me, right?
Sure.
And
or your region or your neighborhood. It's
right.
Like, oh, that this means a lot to me. Let me try to understand this violin chart or whatever.
Exactly. So they can see it and they can say, okay, that's me, or this is my area, or this relates to me directly. And in that case, with those race cars, I think we called them roadsters, right? They could find their data point in the graph. They could find their friend's data point in the graph.
Yeah.
And so it becomes far more interesting when they see themselves in there, and it becomes this process of discovery. So we talk a lot about data fluency, but I think we don't talk enough about kind of like data exploration as a component of that. The ability to explore and find new and interesting points within the data, whether it's yourself or trends or something like that, that data exploration concept is really powerful in the learning process.
And I think, oh, sorry, Kelly.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate, I think Kelly was alluding to this a little bit, where there's more and more data every day, right? And it's not like in the past when I was a student in high school like 2 years ago. It wasn't like that, where you had very little data and you could just pretty much on an Excel sheet, or it was easy for the teacher to say, okay, we're just going to work with this data set. Now you just have access, and easily, because you have the hardware there, to access gigabytes, terabytes of data. And you can't, like you said, Sean, you can't find yourself. Like you can't, you have to use graphs and data visualization to better understand what you're working with and what you're looking at. And so the need, as we have more and more data, the need to understand the data with graphs and visualization, I think, becomes bigger, which is why we're seeing more and more users in Plotly.
Yep.
That just blew my mind. So for our listeners, they know that my big goal was to make this sort of dashboard, and I made a smaller version of it for the boot camp, and it was great. And it was old data. The trends were kind of lame. The machine learning outcome was like 0.3, really bad predictability. But I'm thinking this while you guys are talking. We have this monitor in our classroom, and Sean used to have a hand sanitizer, and it would collect how many people hand sanitize their hands. This is during COVID. But I'm thinking about all the possibilities, just plug in a monitor, put a TV, not even a monitor, whatever you can grab, run the program through an old computer. I mean, whatever computer can handle VS Code or whatever, and you could have kids feed in, how are you feeling today? How was this topic? And that data, just, a quick little 1-minute survey connecting in with that data collection live. Then you have a whole week of old data plus how they're feeling. Maybe you could see trends. There's just so many things that you can do that we don't do in education on data collection, because we use data that's old, right? So already past the point, they got an A, kids moving on, or they got an F, the kids moving on, but nothing that's real-time accessible data. And all those ideas, that's pretty cool. Thinking that. And it's simple, connected to a Google Sheet, connected to a form or something.
Right.
So
I think it's one thing, if I were a teacher, that I would be thinking about, but this could be just because I did teach a little bit, as I was invited here when I was teaching a little bit about climate change to a middle school in the Bronx, and I was a teacher in like my former life. I was teaching English. What I find from what I know is that more and more people are interested in learning Python, right? Because it's a simpler language than Java or JavaScript, and because it's just being more and more used in the world. Like knowing Python can better prepare you for the world and jobs and careers than most other languages. But teaching Python to children with low attention spans, short attention spans, is probably not easy. I haven't done that. I did it in English. That was hard enough. And so I'm thinking, if teachers would use Plotly and Dash to teach Python, that would engage them, in my opinion, a lot better. I have community members, not students, but adults, they tell me, I'm using Plotly and Dash because it's so easy. I'm actually learning Python, and this is what happened to me as well, through Plotly and Dash. I really didn't have a reason. I wanted to learn Python, they say, but I didn't really know for what. But now that I know that I'm going to explore data, I can create this beautiful dashboard with Dash, I'm going to learn Python as I learn Plotly and Dash. And because Plotly and Dash are so easy, you only need to know Python lists and dictionaries, and and that's it, like functions, and then you know how to create your Dash app. So if they can teach that at school as a tool to teach Python, I think it would be beneficial.
100%.
Yeah, I think that it goes back to something that we've I think we've had guests repeat over and over again, which is it's almost always going to result in failure if you say, I want to learn Python, right?
Right.
It usually goes with, I have this thing that I want to do, and I'm going to use Python to do it, right?
Exactly.
I have this data that I want to graph or visualize. I'm going to use Python to do that. And that leads me to Dash and Plotly, right? It leads me to some tool that I can use, and then I do the thing that I really want. And along the way, I'm learning how to use Python. I'm learning how to use Dash. I'm learning how to use Plotly. And that's where, as we think about education and kind of where we are right now, we're at this confluence between the way we used to teach these concepts, which is grounded in a lot of really good pedagogy, right? Like there's a lot of really good science behind why we teach graphing data this way, or why we teach understanding data in small sets first, right? But what we're missing is that the world is shifting towards that much more rich, complex, data-oriented, industry, society, whatever. And we haven't figured out the best way to bridge the gap from teaching those concepts in the traditional way that's worked really well into the new skills and technologies that we need to use, right? So it's kind of like I see my own kids in elementary school, third grade, fifth grade, when they learn a lot of really good fundamental statistical stuff, like here's how to get a mean, here's how to get a mode, here's how to plot those numbers on a graph. The next step is, how do we go further, right? How do we go from that sort of plot on paper and pencil to now do it for 1,000 points of data or 1,000,000 points of data, and showing them that it's something that they can do, right? That they can learn how to do that. It's not something that's insurmountable, right?
Right.
100%. I want to sort of add, but sort of switch topics like I always do, because I want Adam to talk about this. Hold on, I'm going to cough. Sorry, listeners. Edit that. I want to talk about Dash and ChatGPT. There's two sides of that story. I want Adam to explain on you had like a competition, that side, and also just talk about the hallucinations and stuff that I encountered, but I'll let you talk about it.
Oh, I'd love to also hear later from you, Kelly, what hallucinations you've encountered. But yeah, I mean, it happens where like hallucinations, ChatGPT is not explicit to Dash. It happens with other anything else really. So we at Plotly, on the community side, the community forum, I've introduced bi-monthly, well, every 2 months, an app building challenge, right? And this current challenge is building an app while incorporating like an OpenAI API into it, like ChatGPT into it. And so far, we've had a nice amount of submissions. We usually get the submissions towards the end, which is in a week from now, because people are like, I want to win this contest. I'm not going to share my app now. I want to share like at the last minute. So I'm excited to see what's going to turn out. But from playing around with ChatGPT, and I also made a video on YouTube at Plotly's YouTube on how to work with ChatGPT and Dash. I see like two different, I guess, in two different ways. One is you either you use ChatGPT to enhance the learning process of Dash, and ChatGPT can help you understand how to program and create a Dash app, right? Incorporating Plotly Graphing Library. And the other thing is building your own Dash app that incorporates ChatGPT into it. So you have your own API key of ChatGPT. You incorporate that. They have their API documentation. And I did this a couple of weeks ago where there is like a chat bot inside my Dash app, right? So then other people can use my Dash app that has ChatGPT inside of it. So they're two separate things. The challenge that I'm right now is the app challenge is for people to incorporate ChatGPT into Dash. The video I made is how to use ChatGPT to actually create Dash apps and enhance your learning. And both of them are very, very valuable depending on what stage of the learning process you are in.
Yeah, and when I found the code, where you had just the little chat box, enter your prompt, and and I was like, oh, this is so cool. So many kids would love that. Just even showing them that you could access, but you have to do the auth key, and that's a little bit more challenging sometimes for 8th graders and 7th graders. But I can imagine high schoolers. Here's my own little chat bot directly linked to ChatGPT. And that to me is like definitely a dopamine hit for any kid. Wow, I directly hit it on my website with ChatGPT. So that was out there. I just thought it's cool. What else was I going to say? Oh, the hallucinations with ChatGPT. That was fun. They sent me on a random road, because this is me trying to get my app done in like a week with all this data and like multiple pages. And I was trying to make a drop down menu that was connecting, and just the way that it was doing it was blocking out a port. And then the ChatGPT was telling me to put a different port number and put this in and change the URL. And I was in a wild goose chase. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going here anymore. And it kept giving me deprecated code.
Yeah. And that's something to note. Like if you use ChatGPT to learn Dash, it's going to teach you Dash, but it will teach you, depending on if you're using 3.5 or 4.0, it will teach you code that was used about a year ago, maybe a year and a half, which is not wrong, because all Dash versions, I think Kelly asked me, right now we're on Dash 2.11.1. All Dash versions are backward compatible. So if ChatGPT is giving you won't know what version it is, but it's giving you kind of like Dash syntax that we used to use in Dash 2.5, then that's fine. It's still going to work. It's just, when then you see real life examples of current community members of the documentation, it was like, wait, why is this code written differently? It might confuse you a little bit, but it'll work. So just keep that in mind. If like you're a teacher and you want to learn Dash before you teach it to your students, or before you have your students go at it with ChatGPT and then start asking you questions, it's important that you also read the documentation and don't just rely on ChatGPT to become an expert in learning Dash.
I think that's a good takeaway for the teachers, though, right? So you can tell. I can always tell I could tell, it's in summer right now, but I could always tell when the kids were using ChatGPT to do their assignments, because it's beautiful, because we talked about this last show, but they do the hashtags and they do perfect syntax, and no 6th, 7th, and 8th grader has perfect syntax with the double space, the spaces and everything. But that's something to note. Like if your students come up to you and you say, well, I've done this visualization and it looks this way, and you're familiar with the library, it's always a fun little, well, why did you do that? Have you looked at the documentation? Go back and change it and update it. So refactor the code. Go ahead, John.
Well, and it does also, I think, encourage us to really be clear about what we want the students to learn, right? Are we there to have them learn the detailed understanding of how Plotly works and the best syntax? In some cases, yes, right? Or do we want them to visualize some data and have the opportunity to work with it, right? Or is it something completely different? Because depending on what the goal is, right, then, using generative AI to create the code might be like the fastest and best way to do it, right? In other cases, maybe there are serious drawbacks to doing it that way because you're learning the old, outdated version, right? So I think, when you're teaching, and especially in this world, you have to get really clear about the learning objectives. Like, what do we really want them to learn? What's their key takeaway? And Adam, to your point earlier about making everything faster, right? And smoothing out a lot of these speed bumps, right? That's where, maybe using tools like this or using the documentation can help us smooth out those speed bumps that people run into when all they want to do is take this data set and visualize it in a specific way that they can see in their mind, but they don't know how to turn that into the code, right? So I really like the idea of, having clear objectives for what we want them to learn, but then encouraging them to use all of the resources that are at their disposal, the ChatGPT tools, the documentation, the community, leverage everything to make sure you're coming up with the best answer for what you're trying to solve.
Right. And Sean, what I really liked about Dash especially now, but even when I started learning it before joining Plotly, is that it's really just a tool to allow you to create front-end interface, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to, it might be even, like you said, it might be easier for teacher to say, instead of, I'm going to teach you Python through Dash, it's like, you're going to do some math, and you know how to do some math with Python, but I want to see the results. So we're going to put everything on the web browser with Dash. I want to see the user, the front end. Or instead of you in the back end doing algorithms and clicking execute code and seeing the result in execute code, because you want to change the inputs of your mathematical equation, well, you do that everything on the front end. So you just change it by putting everything on the browser with your keyboard. So it just makes, and you don't, that's for math. You could do it for geography. You could do it for any subject matter where you just want to have a user interface on the computer and you want to interact with it with a lot more ease. You just use a Dash in Python and you have it. So it's like a very good reason to teach it.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I know we're cutting on time, but one last little, wow. Imagine this unit, first day back to school. Here's my Dash code, and you're going to do an About Me page. And here's all you have to do is just fill in the blanks of who you are. And this is going to be your web page showing on your computer. You jump them into VS Code already. They have like a file structure already set up. Maybe share it out as like a package deal. And look, you've got a week one About Me, get to know your student. And there, I think about the time when I used to teach HTML back in 2005, 7, 6, whatever it was. And that would be our first unit. It would take 5 weeks, but
yeah, I mean, I love the idea of the About Me with data, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's my summer in data, and maybe they add things like I beat 17 different levels on the latest, Call of Duty or whatever it is, right? But like some sort of like, here's my summer in data presentation when everyone comes back to school.
Cool. Yeah. You just wrote 8th grade curriculum for me.
There you go. There you go. I think the other thing that, and I think this is my final thought, is that the other thing that I like about using visualizations with data and using it with code is that one of the hard things for students, especially juvenile students, not adult learners, but students in middle school and high school, they're now learning things that their parents never learned, right? They're learning concepts in coding and computer science that, unless their parent is a computer science person or is very technology focused, they might show them, like, look at this thing that I did, and the parent or the adult has no idea what they're looking at, right? But if you show them, hey, look at this web page that I made that has all of this data that I graphed on here from this data source, or that I added myself, or whatever, now you've got something that people can relate and respond to. And there's definitely this power of reinforcement in the learning when a learner can show what they did to someone else that they care about, and that person says, wow, that's so cool, tell me more.
Yeah.
So I love that aspect of learning with data and learning with data visualization. And I think Dash would be very well suited for it, because you get some very beautiful, pretty visualizations for a very few lines of code.
Right. Yeah, with like 10 lines of code, you can get started.
Yeah.
Last
thoughts
about
getting started. Oh, sorry, Kelly.
No. I was gonna say last thoughts. We've got about a few more minutes.
Talking about getting started, like if listeners of the show are interested in learning a little bit more about Plotly and Dash, obviously you can just plotly.com. You can see our documentation. My best recommendation I think would be to take our 20 Dash in 20 tutorial, Dash in 20 minutes tutorial. You'll see it if you go into our Dash docs. It's like you'll see right on the top, Dash in 20, and it should take you about 20 minutes. We've experimented with beginners, and it will really teach you the most important elements of Dash, right? How to incorporate data, how to display things on the page, how to use a function, a callback, in order to create interactivity, and how to add graphs to it. And then you're done. And then from there, you can decide how deep you want to go into it before you teach it. We also developed a curriculum, an open source curriculum, in case teachers are interested in learning more about it and then using it to teach other students. So I'd be happy, Kelly, Sean, to share that with you as well.
Yeah, we'll put it in our show notes.
Very nice. All right. So for our audience, if you have questions for Adam or questions for Kelly or myself, you can always send them through our website at teachingpython.fm, and we'll make sure they get to the right person. You can also interact with us on social media at Teaching Python on Twitter. I'm at smtiber on Twitter and Mastodon, and Kelly is at Kelly Pered on Twitter. Adam, any best places for to follow you or engage with the work that you're doing through Plotly?
I would say you can always open an account on our Plotly forum, and then you can find me there in messages. Best way is probably to email me if you have any question, adam@plotly.com. But also, Sean, Kelly, feel free. If you get any questions or people are asking you to connect them with me, feel free. Just, you have my email address, connect them with me, and then I'll be happy to follow up and meet with them if they want.
Yeah, and I know from experience on LinkedIn, the Plotly employees are super nice and got me connected with Adam right away. And just a great, just like most Python community, not to generalize, but most Python community members, always happy to help, always happy to answer questions, even for people that, may not know exactly what they're doing. And I just encourage you to reach out to Plotly because it's a great group. I think it's my new favorite library. Poor Matplotlib.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I think that does it for this week. As always, we're happy to have had this conversation. Adam, thank you so much for the time today to talk about Dash and Plotly and how they can support learning. It really means a great deal to us that you took the time to do this. We're big fans of both libraries, and I think we'll be finding ways to use them in every possible situation we can from here on out.
Cool. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Kelly, for the invite. Have a wonderful week.
You too. So for Teaching Python, this is Sean.
And this is Kelly signing off.